Hello and welcome to the Securus Firestarter. This is going out on January 26, 2015. And boy, that's what Super Bowl week coming up. So what do they say? Cheaters never win unless it's the Super Bowl.
Is that what they say?
I don't know. You're just nodding your head.
I think your balls are soft. That's all I know.
Yeah, I liked somebody did statistical analysis on fumbles with the Patriots, and looks like something fishy maybe had been going on for a while there. But Tom Brady felt normal to him.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
So they were
enough
out there
of
feeling balls. Great, great.
that. People probably care more about security stuff as opposed to what's coming up in football. But it is in my hometown with the Super Bowl, so I'm going to be absolutely avoiding the downtown area and the stadium for the next couple of weeks with the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl because town gets a little bit crazy in traffic and all sorts of weird nonsense. And
You're
some
not
of the
renting
things.
out any rooms?
Yeah, my driver, the guy that I've used sometimes when I go to, I get a car service to the airport sometimes. He knows people getting, 20 to 40 grand for their house for a week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
Airbnb.
that's like a rap star in your house with all of his posse, and
What could
that may
what
not,
could possibly go wrong?
yeah, or famous people or whoever other kind of people that have that kind of money. Yeah, so not taking my kids to a hotel for that. Uh, and Mike, this week the idea was yours, so why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, it's the beginning of the year. So what we have is an opportunity to kind of set the stage a little bit in terms and we do a little bit of this when we will go through RSA, the RSA, kind of guide as well as, kind of the RSA conference, pre-RSA conference fire starters and videos that we do. But the fact is, RSA conference is at the end of April this year. So, God, about a third of the year will be gone. So I figured what we would do is just, real quick hit on, between the three of us, one topic each in terms of what we think is really going to happen and what we think is going to be interesting in 2015. So I don't know if you wanted to start, Rich, if you wanted me to start, but the general idea is, a real quick hitter in terms of what we expect to see in 2015. We can debate it a little bit, we can poke at it a little bit, and then we can, really defer a lot of our deeper trend work to the RSA conference guide, which we will have again probably in, I'd say, early April, as we've done a couple of weeks before the RSA conference for the last couple of years. You're muted.
I'm muted, darn it. Why don't you kick it off?
Well,
I know, and I'm all red again. I got to figure out what's going
it's
on. My
true.
this new
You get a
computer.
new computer, it's all fancy and shiny, and the friggin' audio doesn't work very well, and you look like an angry tomato. But besides that, I'm sure the Retina screen is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of my trend, what I wanted to kind of dive into, for 2015, gets back to, basically malware everywhere, right? And everything has to do with breaches, everything has to do with threats, everything has to do with malware, at least in terms of the status quo of security, in terms of what I have come to call the security industrial complex, the industry, the machine that, many of us have seen built up over the last 20 years. What we're seeing the security industrial complex really start to focus on is this idea of threat detection. And it's a concept we've been talking about for a long time, right? We've been failing at prevention for years. Now folks are starting to realize that, well, hey, maybe detection and response is kind of an interesting way to start thinking about, how we can, again, not stop all the attacks, that's futile, but to detect them faster. And again, we've been talking about reacting faster and better. I don't know what, since 2008, 2007. So this isn't really novel stuff to us, but it seems that the rest of the industry is starting to dive in. And I think in 2015, what we're going to see is continued innovation both on the network side. We're starting to see some pretty interesting new technologies in terms of doing, I don't want to say big data analytics on network telemetry, because then I would have to basically do a funnel of beer in terms of my buzzword, security buzzword drinking game that I've made my life
Drink.
into. Drink a few times on that front. But what you're seeing is, the continued gathering of interesting network events, the continued gathering of, kind of network telemetry, and the analysis of that telemetry to really identify compromised devices a lot sooner in the process. So what we've done historically is look at technologies like SIM and maybe even some packet capture things as ways to gather that data and then do analytics on that. But the problem with those tools has always been you needed to know what to look for, and we didn't know, right? So we're starting to see some new technologies happen on the network, and a lot of those are mapping into the endpoint as well, which is, again, gathering very detailed telemetry from the endpoints, starting to do analytics on that, sometimes in the cloud, sometimes within some kind of analysis farm or cluster on site, and then really kind of figuring out, when these devices have been compromised to, again, shorten that window between when attack happens and when you actually know when attack happens. So in 2015, I think we're going to see a lot more innovation. We're going to see a lot more activity on the detection side, both endpoint and network. And I think it's going to be interesting because it gives defenders, again, it helps just to shorten that window, make us as a practice more responsive, and again, hopefully get in the way of a number of these things before you end up on the front page of whatever crappy news media negative website you tend to read.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking about that, it kind of, we talk a lot about predictions and stuff, and we make fun of a lot of predictions out there, but the ones that generally are a safe bet is you look at the people who are the kind of on the bleeding edge of being attacked and the bleeding edge of using technologies, and just know that eventually most of that will likely trickle down unless there's kind of vertical related issues. And so some of what you're talking about now, it's all this stuff like guys had to develop custom for themselves, the GEs and the defense contractors and all of those kind of organizations, and then once they've done that, now all of a sudden it's spinning out and there's products and markets, and the reason for that, it's a couple of things, not because they've had this great stuff, but the attacks themselves trickle down. So it's the same for the attackers. The attackers innovate. You have the leading edge attackers that come up with the leading edge techniques, and then eventually those are just the hacks that are Metasploit and everybody uses. And so if you watch those parallels, it seems to be like kind of a good way to predict and get a sense of those things that are going to hit. And it does seem that the threat intelligence and closing the action loop and basically react faster and better, which you and I have been saying since long before we even worked together, is all kind of coming together for a wider swath of the market, because now organizations that don't have the internal wizards to actually pull this off are able to get at least a partially down that path, down that functionality, but with some of the things that are hitting the market. Or did I just totally misinterpret what she said? Because I do that a lot.
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, but to me, I think the real catalyst here is being able to show customers stuff that they haven't been able to see before, right? Yeah. And again, when you've got a SIM, you know what you're looking for. Yeah, it'll pop some alerts. Maybe you're staffed to deal with them, maybe you're not. The whole idea of doing kind of a higher order of math on a lot of this telemetry and a lot of this information is to be able to, again, tell somebody something that they didn't know, right? Identify devices that are compromised sooner, as opposed to, again, either waiting for your payment processor or the FBI, to call you up and tell you have a problem, which is, by the way most breaches go down. Still, horrifyingly enough, that's the way most notification happens in today's environment. And again, I mean, I just think that we're starting to see a couple of things come together. One is the ability for these higher orders of math to actually happen just due to the analytical techniques that are out there today, but also the general acknowledgement within the customer base that we still have to spend some money on prevention, but the reality is it just isn't working good enough. Right? It's just, for a long time it was good enough, or we could, make our auditor go away. It ain't good enough anymore. So we really have to think about something differently. So they're more open to this kind of discussion as well, which again, I think is a little bit of a sea change in terms of what we've seen relative to the behavior of the last couple of years.
Yeah, remember when we say things like this, it's not that this is not stuff that hasn't been done, because some of you are like, oh, those idiots, we've been doing this for years. Well, yes, you have maybe, but most people have not. And so it's that kind of distribution into wider swaths of the market, which is when we get to like kind of start talking about these things in an entirely different context. So sorry, my apparently my son just went to the bathroom, and
On
he's
the
under
potty.
2 years old, under the on the potty
Uh,
himself. So
mm.
I'm not going to put him in front of the camera because nope, he's not wearing pants. Okay, my wife just took him out.
Oh, so he is your son.
Yeah, inside joke to anybody who's ever been to RSA or DEF CON. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, I'm gonna just jump into mine.
Yeah, yeah, do
And
it.
so, the one area, and this is kicking off faster than I thought. It's not like a massive trend, the same way it's going to be like this big industry changing thing like Mike was talking about. But I've been talking to way more people about SaaS security in general, and cloud security gateways in particular. So that's what Gartner calls cloud access and security brokers. I hate that name, especially because well, I won't go into some of the details about why I don't like that name, but I'm calling them cloud security gateways. I think Pete Lindstrom's calling them cloud security gateways. 451, I'm working on Adrian over there. So the rest of the analyst world, we're all going to gain up on Gartner and lose, and the that's what happens. So these are the ones where if you're using Salesforce and Box and all these other apps, basically you funnel your connections through them. That's one way they work, either in a reverse or a forward proxy mode, and they can layer all sorts of additional activity monitoring, analytical, alerting kinds of capabilities, and on what you're actually able to do, because SaaS providers are just horrible. They're all over the map. Some are good. I mean, Box is great. Salesforce is pretty solid. Some of the others are getting there. ServiceNow is becoming really popular, and what's the other one? Workday is getting to be really popular. But again, a lot of them, they just don't have the fundamental controls that we're used to at an enterprise level, or the ability to monitor activity that we're used to at an enterprise level. And so these gateways are interesting because they cover kind of three major categories of capabilities. Gartner's got something they call four pillars. I like my version a little better because it's mine and not theirs. Which
And
is,
it's a triangle. We like
yeah,
triangles better.
I like triangles.
We're triangle guys.
It's discover. So they've got this discovery feature where you can actually, using very passive techniques, find all the SaaS platforms your employees are using. You can hook into like DNS logs. You can look into your existing perimeter gateways.
Right.
You can install agents
Web
in the
filters.
browser.
Right. Web filters. Easy. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, and by the way, the only reason this market exists is because the web security gateways, they totally screwed up and blew an entire like market opportunity. So now they all became commoditized. I've been begging these guys for years. Hey, build categories, build detection so people know when their employees are using things like these SaaS apps. And they didn't do it, or by the time they did, it was too late. So anyway, you have that discovery capability to find what you're using. Then you have the control, where the ones you want to control, you can kind of funnel them through these. In some cases, it's a way of funneling through. The more longer-term piece I'll get into in a minute, because there's a much better way to do that without having to actually capture the traffic. Because right now it's back to the bump in the wire thing, which we don't like. And then there's all sorts of capability. And the vendors, they've got all, each of them will do different things. Some of them will do even down to encryption. I think that's horrible, but because it breaks your SaaS application. But if you want to do that, you can do that on at least a limited basis. You can do DLP. You can, find stagnant accounts and zombie users. Some of them have fraud analysis capabilities to figure out is it an account takeover. Some of them are looking at or now starting to push down to actually integrate with MDM and endpoints to figure out, is this an authorized endpoint or a non-authorized endpoint. They have integrations with the authentication vendors, so the Ping and Okta and RSA, who have the ability to kind of funnel and do all that traffic. Adrian, are you trying to fix your?
Does my head look fat to you?
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about it, man. You're beyond a tech support nightmare.
You need to get on the treadmill. I think that's the conclusion.
Yeah. He's got to run. We got to get him on a half marathon now.
It's that whole shrunken head therapy I'm going through.
Mike's done it. I've done a couple. So it's your turn.
So let me get this straight. You're sticking your head in the oven like one of those the shrunken apple head guys when we were kids.
Crush your head. All right. Anyway, gateways do a lot of good stuff, and then you can get into protection where you can block activity, you can do more alerting, and everything else.
Well,
so,
Rich, why isn't this a feature, man? I mean,
it is a feature, but it's not going to be a feature because, they blew it. The guys that should have had this blew it.
Understand, but historically, what we've seen is yes. I mean, you can bet good money on the fact that established lazy incumbents will miss the next thing, but and then a new category will show up, but it doesn't remain a new category forever. Right. At some point, either the big guys say, oh, shit, we missed that one. So, they just buy their way into it. Or, that capability gets built into kind of another wave after kind of the initial guys screwed it up. So I mean, are we talking about an 18-month thing, or is this
No.
something that has a little bit more staying power?
I think some of it's going to be integrated to some degree, but I think it's got staying power because just the basic control and like some basic alerting, you could kind of make that be like a cloud SOC SIM sort of a play. But when you get into some of the big issue across SaaS providers is none of them have consistent controls. So it's different for every SaaS provider how you do different things inside of it. None of them have consistent APIs and interfaces. And even if you get the monitoring pieces down and you just dumb it down to that level, if you want the ability to set corporate level policies that get enforced across, 100, 200, 300 SaaS providers, which is not unusual, that seems to me like something different and unique. Because I don't know any existing security tools where we can do that policy enforcement stuff that we can plug into. Because we've never looked at it that way before. We've never enforced application level policies from kind of a central tool where we handle the users and the governance and everything else. And SaaS is pushing us towards needing something like that.
Yeah,
because
I mean, folks did try, right? I mean, you remember some of those early entitlement tools that never really went anywhere, ended up getting kind of acquired because they required a significant amount of application level integration. So it's not like this is necessarily a new idea. I mean, I just think that kind of the presence of some of the APIs and the the ability to kind of integrate it at that level makes it feasible as opposed to doing one-offs, which in any middleware business is kind of the death knell.
Yeah, and I think because the next layer where these things communicate isn't as like these inline gateways, and some of them do this already. It's connecting via API and directly manipulating and managing the services underneath by doing API connections, monitoring activity at that level. Some providers can do that. So I mean, it's public. We've done some work with Box. We've written papers, but like they have a really robust API for managing all their security features and functions. Not all the other cloud providers do. So I think today we need that gateway piece. It's not going to go away for a long time. And then we move into the API piece, and because it gets us into this world of being able to manage, kind of normalize controls to some degree across all those platforms. You're not going to have full parity. There's different things you need to enforce on different platforms, but this at least gives security people insight, because the alternative is they have to have an account and they have to know how each of those services work.
Right.
And so there's a lot of intelligence and research that the vendors put into, because when they hook in a new service, they have to stay up to date on the features and the functions, and there's that whole research arm of it, so they can actually kind of front end those so that the people who are actually using it don't have to learn all of that themselves. So I think it's got staying power. It is going to be integrated. The discovery, basic level of discovery, that's a throwaway. Some of them give it away for free today as it is. There's some other layers of discovery and kind of the ongoing process piece. The monitoring, some of the monitoring I'm sure will be integrated. You can do that without having as much application context knowledge, and people punch it out to the SIM. You get into any of the governance level and any of the more advanced alerting and those kinds of features, then all of a sudden that need for content. I mean, that's what it is. We're a content business. That becomes basically a need for content. To have the knowledge of all of those SaaS providers, that's probably what I think is going to give the staying power. Because it's not the same as integrating your own custom internal apps, because no vendor can do that unless they have a massive services engagement ongoing with you, which is what those entitlement things, it was the big headache. But the SaaS providers are fairly standardized across the main, and by main ones, I mean, that 1,000 or 2,000 main ones. Most use. So you don't have to have those custom, and they can leverage that across all the clients of the particular gateway vendor. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it's pretty interesting.
Good. Adrian, your trend dude?
And you got 5 minutes, because then we got to get rid of Mike because he's got a call.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, it's actually a topic that Rich and I have been talking about for a long time, is tokenization. But there's been just a boatload of stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. One of the things that has been going on is that we know that Visa has a standard out there. A lot of people don't talk about it, but they do have a tokenization standard. But we expect that within the next couple of months, the PCI Council is going to update their standard. NIST has been working on a tokenization standard to replace not just credit card information, but information in general with a token and how that would work. And so right around RSA this year, you're going to start hearing about new tokenization standards. And what's going to be happening is every single one of the security vendors on the planet are going to want to integrate this technology if they don't have it. We believe that there's going to be about 3 or 4 new vendors by RSA that have got new tokenization technologies for consumers. We're also going to see certification of these vendors to various standards. And so you're going to see the entire hype machine in full mode. And they're going to be attempting to compete with the tokenization that companies like Apple and Apple Pay offer. And so there's going to be a lot of hype, but what does this really mean to the end consumer? Probably not a whole heck of a lot. The standard should have been out there a long time ago because we've been using tokenization effectively for payments for a long freaking time. And it is actually a case of where many of the industry at large has not simply followed suit. In addition to that, a lot of the vendors don't seem to be talking about what's most important is how this actually reduces scope and reduces cost for many of the consumers. So we're going to be hearing about this hype and this differentiation that my tokenization is better than yours. I offer red tokenization. Mine scales. I'm certified, to the NIST standard or the PCI standard. What does all of it mean? Probably not a whole heck of a lot. So there is going to be a lot of this going on this year. There'll be additional vendors embedding. I expect at least 2 of the major payment processors to switch providers or actually build their own tokenization solution. So a lot of talk going on, a lot of new product offerings. But if you're out there and you're interested in this type of technology, simply focus on how it makes your day job easier and how it actually cuts your costs, because any other conversation is probably not relevant to you.
Sounds like a crypto discussion to me, right? If you're like a normal human, why would you ever mess around with a crypto library or trying to build your own crypto type stuff? Why is this any different? I mean, you've got a number of different kind of structures in order to perform a lot of these activities. Why are folks even messing with this?
They really shouldn't be. It should be embedded in many of the things that they use. And they shouldn't be mucking around with their own tokenization solutions, much in the same way they shouldn't be building their own key management servers. It should be embedded within the infrastructure. Today it's not. And many of the merchants that we talk to, the big merchants, there's no way that they want to get rid of that credit card information because it's still so embedded into their analytics, customer tracking, customer service applications. And I really start to think that Apple is going to have a huge impact with Apple Pay. Now, every time I go into a supermarket or a convenience store or wherever I go, I actually ask other customers or the people running the cash register who uses automated payment and so forth. And I'm actually talking to customers who really are starting to use this and actually want to use it. So a lot of the Android customers have Google Wallets, but they can't really use them in a lot of the places that they go, and they're really looking forward to actually being able to use it to more places or transfer money between them and family members and so forth, to use it as with an automated currency. And so this whole software acquisition, or was it Softcard, was to be acquired by Google. This is they're going to be following suit, and I expect that at some point in time within 2015 they'll offer a tokenization solution for their customers as well.
All right, so that is we went a little bit long here, not too bad, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Not really tokenization. I mean, who cares, Adrian? Come on, really. Fast security, incident response.
Listen, I tell you, I care when I have to reissue. When I get my 3rd or 4th reissued credit card this year.
Yeah.
So I do care then.
What a lot of people don't know, if you use Apple Pay, it's actually the payment provider uses their own tokenization. So that's not managed or mediated by Apple, which is why anybody who wants to buy into that has to have tokenization capabilities of their own. With the banks, not the merchants, when they opt in to use an Apple Pay. All right. Well, I'm going to cut us off at this point because we've had another good one, and hopefully we didn't put you guys to sleep. And it's been a long meeting for us because we had our staff meeting before this one, and we had all sorts of stuff to talk about. It's going to be a heck of an interesting year. And with that, thanks everyone. And normally this time of year we get to say we'll see you at RSA in a few weeks, and nope, we'll see you in a few months. So we'll have to save that one up. All right. Have a good week, everyone.
See ya.